Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Coffee with Craig. This is a show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, where we talk about the Second Amendment, gun rights in pop culture, politics. We talk about policy, sports, you name it, all relating to the Second Amendment. So please take a moment and like and share this video feed so that, so that your friends can join in. All right, so yesterday, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a shooting at a middle school in Los Angeles, California. Um, it turns out that it was a 12-year-old girl seemed to have brought a firearm to school. Turns out it went off apparently by accident. An individual didn't think one of the students didn't think it was a real firearm. But it kind of brought to my mind the things that we hear, because in the end, turned out that there were in the end four people would wind up being shot, which, by the way, meets the definition of a mass shooting. And obviously, before everything happened, before we had all of the news and all of the information, there's always these certain things that we hear every single time that come out of these shootings. Basically I came up with this idea of 6 things that you hear every single time that come out of these particular shootings, and some of them, quite frankly, are true, and there's one, quite frankly, well, actually, no, I take that back. I would venture to say that all 6 are definitely true, maybe just not in the way in which some folks would think. Now, this is actually based off an article that I read in Newsmax talking about mass shootings, but they only had 5, and I actually had 6. So I thought you guys might find this interesting. One of the first things that you hear coming out of these shootings is almost always that the firearm was purchased legally or acquired illegally. The point to this whole thing right here is that no matter how many laws you have, in the state of California, we have probably more laws when it comes to acquiring a firearm than just about any other state. I mean, we're one of the worst when it comes to restricting your right to keep and bear arms. Yet and still, a shooting such as the one that occurred yesterday in the city of Los Angeles still occurred. In fact, it was interesting because the mayor, the district attorney of Los Angeles, Mr. Mike Feuer, made it a point to say, we have laws about safe storage and everyone needs to heed those here in Los Angeles. The point being that, laws are going to be ignored by criminals. Criminals ignore laws. That's why they're criminals, right? And then laws are also not going to take someone who is irresponsible and make them responsible. I wish they could, but quite frankly, they're generally not. In this case, clearly a student got a hold of a firearm that they should not have gotten a hold of. But there was a way to prevent it without saying, we need to pass storage laws. There was a way to prevent this tragedy, and we'll talk about it a little bit later. But that's almost one of the things you almost always note is that the gun was purchased legally or acquired illegally. One of the other things that you hear is the gunman broke laws, like, I don't know, taking a gun into a gun-free school zone. That's what this particular student did. In Tehama County, that's exactly what the shooter there did. In fact, most mass shootings occur in places where people are not legally allowed to carry a firearm. In many cases, they also break other laws. Why? Because they are criminals. They don't care about the law. The mentally insane do not care about the law. The terrorists do not care about the law. All right? Criminals don't care about the law. So you keep passing these laws that only affect law-abiding citizens, and you wonder how the laws keep getting broken. Well, that's because the laws don't cover the people who are actually committing these shootings. What you also hear, it was probably in a gun-free zone. Yeah, well, once again, that just goes to the point before. But it also goes to this point, is that oftentimes what happens is that individuals who are seeking to do harm to as many people as possible are going to look for the most target-rich environments. And the most target-rich environments are going to be places where individuals are not in a position to fight back. Well, let's see. If I have a gun, I'm going to go someplace where no one else is likely to have a gun. It just makes sense, right? To some of us, but some people seem to think that disarming law-abiding citizens will stop the carnage. The fact is that all you're doing is stopping those individuals who would be in a position to stop the other individuals who we know are going to carry a firearm no matter what. You also hear that the modern day weapon used was extremely effective. Okay, let me just tell you, everything ever invented is eventually improved upon, right? I mean, think about it. You had the telegraph, then you had the telephone, then you had the eventually you would have the cell phone, and now you have what we have now, which are basically little computers and broadcasting machines, entities that systems that are held in devices that we can hold in the palm of our hands. Technology is always going to get better. Technology is always going to get more efficient. So, yeah, that's going to happen. And the thing that you have to understand is that the way in which to combat in cases of firearms is not by telling people, yeah, no, we're going to try and keep the good guys in the Stone Age, right? We're going to make sure that every good guy is using a single shot musket, because the bad guys will always have the newest technology. They'll always be seeking to have the best that they can have, because in the end, they also want to leave those encounters alive, or at the very least, they want to scare you enough to keep you from being able to keep them from doing what it is that they want to do, which is harm you. So yeah, that's called modern technology. I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you, but trying to keep law-abiding citizens in the Stone Age is not going to solve your problem. The gunman was stopped when an armed person posed a threat. Now, here's the thing that is so often, and the anti-gun community, anti-Second Amendment community just refuses to admit, is that in many, many cases, it's where law-abiding citizens, not always law enforcement, by the way, but when law-abiding citizens, when the good guy with the gun confronts a bad guy with the gun, oftentimes, most times, almost all the time, that is what eventually ends the rampage. That is almost always eventually what ends their shooting spree or their crime spree, is when they account. And that, once again, that's not always saying that they're necessarily shot by that individual. In some cases, they simply retreat and they're like, look, I wasn't planning on resistance. In many cases, they give up, they commit suicide, taking their own life, all of those various things. But the point being is that it is oftentimes these cowards, in particular in mass shootings, when they encounter resistance, they cower and they give up, or they get taken out, one or the other. But that's something that we hear almost every time, and something that we need to heed. And the last thing that you hear is, we have got to do something. Now, here is where there's this major divergence. I think those in the anti-Second Amendment community, they say we've got to do something, meaning we've got to pass some law that takes away the right of individuals to be able to defend themselves. That is their response. That is their something. Our something is we need to stand up we have to stand up even more fierce in defense of our right to be able to keep and bear arms, in our ability to be able to exercise our God-given right to defend ourselves. All right, but we also need to step up, and we need to do more in terms of education, more in terms of, there's when it comes to firearms, one of the challenges we have is that the left is either doing one of two things. They're either in Hollywood and they're glorifying firearms, or they're demonizing them. One or the other. But instead of saying, look, we need to help educate, we need to help people understand, number one, they need to know, what are police response times in your communities? Why is it important that you are prepared to be your own first responder? And then with that, teach them how to be that first responder. Teach them about firearm ownership. Teach them about how to be an effective and responsible gun owner. If we were teaching more respect and gun safety, maybe this 12-year-old girl wouldn't have been able to get access to that firearm that she brought to school. Or how about this? How about if we were teaching our kids about firearm safety, maybe she wouldn't have picked up. Maybe she would have recognized that, no, this is not a toy. It's never a toy. Even if it is a toy, even if it is like an airsoft, you never treat what appears to be a firearm like a toy. You have respect for it. You respect the lethality of it and what it can do and the role it's played in our history. When you respect it, you don't play with it. But no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to teach people respect for the Second Amendment. We don't want to teach people respect for firearms. We don't want to teach people how to safely handle weapons because they don't want them handling them at all. Well, guess what? Things don't always go the way you planned. And it's better to be prepared. It is much, much better. Even if you decided you never wanted to have a firearm in your home, it's always better that your children know and understand what a firearm is, how to safely handle it, and when not to ever handle a firearm, and what to do when you come across one. I mean, those are some simple, basic things. The 4 simple rules of gun safety. How about teaching them that? That's not promoting firearms. Once again, teach respect for firearms and for the Second Amendment. That's the something we should do. And the other thing that we finally need to do is we need to get out of the individual's way when they want to be able to defend themselves. We need to allow people to be able to defend themselves with the most efficient and effective means of self-defense that are available to them, that are legal and safe and in legal use. And they need to be able to have access to those. And they need to be able to defend themselves, protect themselves, not just in their home, but wherever they go. That's the something that we've got to do. Anyway, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos. Let's get folks plugged in. Get them plugged into the Firearms Policy Coalition. Let them know about us. You can help us affect policy throughout this country simply by clicking share. Anyway, folks, thank you. Take care. Have fun and stay free.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.